Hello, everybody. My name is Kenneth Cornell from AFL-CIO, and I am a senior writer there, but I also edit our podcast. And what we're going to do here is run through a relatively quick and simple way to do some basic audio editing that would work for a podcast or for any other audio editing you'd like to do. The first thing you're going to need is to obtain a program in order to edit it. And there are two primary options that are cheap and easy. The first you see before you on the screen is called Descript. And Descript is a free program, but it's not permanently free. So if you're going to do longer episodes or a lot of content, you're going to have to pay for it. But basically what it does is it lets you, you put your audio in there and it prints up a transcript of the audio recording, and then you can edit it right in the text here, and that will make the edits down in the audio. I don't like this one as much because it doesn't give me as much exact control, but many people swear by this one. The trade-off there, of course, is that you have a little less precise control over the sounds without doing work that actually takes a little bit longer. But for very basic editing, if you're not too super concerned about minute control, then this one is easier, if not cheaper. What I use personally is Audacity. This is another free program, and this one's completely free. Once you download it and set it up, the next step is to open it up. Once you're fully open, you will see something that looks like this. Now, there are more expensive versions of these programs, some of which you may already have, particularly if you have a Mac. There's probably already a good audio editing software on there. Adobe offers one that's pretty good as well, but those are paid, or you have to have specific formats and everything like that. Audacity does have a Apple version, but I don't, and it's also free, but we're going to use the PC version because that's the one that I have and know how to use. So once you have the window open, you need to import the audio. A couple different ways you can do that. You could do the traditional file open approach, or you can just drag from your folder directly into it. So I would take, for instance, this one and just drag it in here. Take a couple of minutes just to save time. I'm not going to let that fully load. I've already got another one loaded over here. So let's go take a look at this one. All right. So that's the first thing you want to do is add the sound clip. Let's say I've added it, and this is what we come up with. Now, the next thing we're going to want to do here is that if you look at this overall line here, it's very small. It should be filling up most of this space in terms of that, what's in it. Instead, it's really small. What that's mean is it's going to play quietly. So if we hit play...
In many states where they didn't even have collective bargaining.
It's a little soft. If you've got a good computer, you probably hear it fine. But if someone has a bad computer or listen on their phone or something, that audio is not going to be loud enough and they may not be able to hear it. So you'll want to adjust the volume. So the primary way to do this is to go through the effects panel, the effects menu up here. So in order to do this, there's just a couple of steps you're going to have to take. The first one is that if you apply a volume up to the entire thing, that's going to turn up the volume for the entire thing, including, if you see here, there's some spikes. So if we zoom in a little bit, you'll notice that there are some spikes in the volume right here, for instance, that shoot way above the rest of it. So what's going to happen if you just turn up the volume is that's going to be turned up too, and that spike is going to crush people's ears. Now, you can go in there and edit all of these out, but there's an easier way to do this. So what you do is you want to select the entire timeline, Control A on a PC, or just, drag and select. And then you'll want to go into Effect, and down here you will see something called Click Removal. And in audio terms, those spikes, those little temporary spikes, it might be a click of someone's mouth or, a noise in the background or something. Those are called clicks or pops, and hitting this, once everything's selected, hitting Click Removal. And then you don't need to change any of these settings unless you're doing like advanced stuff. You just apply that, it runs through. Now watch, once it goes through and this renders, this spike will be gone. And then it's gone. And then if you zoom back out, there were a number of different spikes you saw, and they've all gotten much smaller. So the sound is much more uniform, and there aren't any weird surprises. Okay, so now you can actually change the volume. There's some people are tempted to use this little slide bar over here on the right, which is audio gain. This is not going to actually increase the quality of the audio. So you'll turn it up and it will get distorted and bad because it's not actually scaling it up. It's just turning up like your volume on your speaker or something like that. So to do it in a clean, uniform way that doesn't lose a lot of data, you'll keep the whole thing highlighted again, go into Effect, and go into Amplify. Now, if the entire timeline has already been declicked and it's relatively uniform, it will pick how much to apply a volume increase for you based on its analysis. Generally speaking, you're going to want to go with that. Now, this one is 9.4, so if I hit that, what's going to happen is you'll see it'll apply that to it, and the size will jump up, and this is more what you want. Now, the danger zone on this is when the volume touches the top and bottom. That's usually going to blow out someone's speakers. So this right here is really the only thing that gets close enough to really touching that top. And
where the labor movement is today and where it's headed. Joe, I thought we'd start by asking you about...
But if you hear that, it didn't really pop because it's just a tiny little sliver and it's really the only part. So that's fine. This we can listen to at this volume. Now, let's say if it's too loud, you might want to turn it down. So again, highlight everything, and in order to turn it down, you would go back to Effects, and you would go into the Amplify section again, and you would just apply a negative amplification. So we're at 0. It's not going to suggest it. You only want to turn it down a little bit. So let's go approximately 2 decibels, or 1.5 decibels. We go there, apply it, and that will turn the volume back down. And notice this one that touched the top isn't there, so it's not going to blow out anyone's speakers. So that's how you turn the volume up and down. But again, it's very important that you do that click removal first, or it's going to sound, those clicks are going to spike on people and hurt people's ears. And the next one to try is cutting, basically taking part of this and getting rid of it. So let's say we want to get rid of this very end section here. So if we're listening to this,
over about strikes is that
it cuts off in the middle of the sentence. So we don't have that other part recorded, let's say. So we're going to want to cut that part off. Now, the key to doing good precision chops and cuts and slices here is to make sure that you're in close enough that you can see, because you have much more precision when this zooms in. So these zoom keys are your friend. Zoom out and zoom in with this one, and you can get really close. But notice it moves the timeline, so you got to get back to where you want, or you probably want to mark it in advance before you change the side. That way you'll stay in that spot. So if I wanted to get rid of all of this part, I probably want to get rid of this too. This little flat line here is a breath. So if you play that's not something you want to keep at the end of that necessarily. So you place where you want to do the cut, highlight that, click and drag over to the end, and then you just hit the delete key or edit delete, or if you're on a PC, right click and delete, and that stuff is gone. Now, if you mess up, the very easy thing is to just edit undo or Control Z, and it comes back. So no matter what you do, if something messes up, immediately just hit Control Z and it'll undo it. So I want that part gone, so I'm going to hit delete. Okay, and that's all it is to cut. At the beginning, you would do the same thing. You would, let's say we want to get rid of this little section here because there's one little blurb there. And so that we just highlight, delete, and now that's gone. Now, what about in between? You want to get something that's not the beginning or the end, then it's a very similar process. But see this right here, this little individual spike here, that's probably not a word. That's probably a click that was not loud enough to get through the thing, but it's still going to sound kind of weird. So if we play
I'm Tim Schlittner.
And I'm Julie Green.
You hear that click? So we want to get rid of that. That doesn't sound good, and that spike could still bother somebody. So what you do is you zoom in even closer so you can highlight just the click and then hit delete on that one, but you just go from your start to your end point. Like we would want to get rid of some of this space here so that it's not such a long pause. We would highlight the segment we want to delete and hit delete. And so now we can listen to that.
The unions. I'm Tim Schlittner.
And I'm Julie Green.
We are honored.
And notice that it goes perfectly smoothly because you're only taking out things that are in between the words. All right. Now, let's say we wanted to move things. So we've got this where it says,
I'm Tim Schlittner.
And I'm Julie.
let's say we wanted to move I'm Tim Schlittner in front of the State of the Union's part.
This is State of the Union.
So what we would take is we would highlight this part here, which is where he says I'm Tim Schlittner.
I'm Tim Schlittner.
Then you would either edit and cut or Control X, and that will take that out, put those two pieces together. You don't have to fix them. Then you move the cursor to wherever you want. If you wanted to put it right here, you put the cursor in there and either Control V or Edit Paste, right click Paste, and that moves that audio there. But again, Control Z undoes it, and if you wanted to say stick it over here, you could just stick it there, and then it would say
Join today. I'm Tim Schlittner. Bye.
So that's how you would cut, and that's how you would move, and all of those things. All right. So let's say you want to cut off part of something, but it's not a clean cut. Like those other ones, every time we looked at them, it was the highlighting of something that was either at the beginning or the end, or that was clearly separated from the other parts. So if we wanted to delete this breath right here, then we would highlight just the breath and not these words, delete that. That's easy. But what if we wanted to delete something that was in the middle of this sentence? So right here we have,
Happy to talk to you. I think 2000.
so let's say if we wanted to get rid of the happy to talk to you and just start with the I think 2000, that's going to be a little more complicated. So, because right in here, if you go in closer,
I think 2008.
he finishes this word and then starts the next one without very clearly separating them. So that means you got to find in here the exact spot you want to chop it and then work around that. So
To you, happy to talk to you. I think
so does it start there?
I think 2000.
That's I think it's not quite enough. So you got to scoot over a little bit more, try there.
I think 2000.
Okay, now that sounds like it only says I think. So
I think 2008.
okay, so then what you would do is you would highlight from that I think where you think it starts, and then go back to the beginning of the period you want to cut, delete that. But now notice that this isn't a smooth downward trajectory like the beginning and end of most sentences and words. So it may sound really harsh when it comes across. So
I think 2018.
luckily that one didn't sound too bad. But just to make sure, what you would do is fade in, or if it's at the end, fade out. So in order to make sure that these things don't come across awkwardly, highlight a small segment of the beginning and go past the beginning. Then what you would do is go into Effects and then fade in. If you were at the end of the word, you would do fade out. But here you do fade in, and then it turns down the beginning of the word's volume, but just the beginning, and gradually fades it up to a normal size, so that if you have a hard edit that, someone didn't cleanly break between words and you had to get it out, maybe say, for instance, they said, a profanity that they didn't want to keep in, or that there was a thing that you accidentally said needed to be edited out, like you left out someone's name or included a wrong title or something so you might have to do that hard edit. And this is the way to smooth it so that it doesn't, it isn't as harsh. And if it's relatively clean, or if you manipulate it correctly, then people won't even be able to notice that there was a cutoff or a change there. So that's how you would fade in and out. And that's very, very important at the beginning or end of a show, or if you're segmenting, sectioning off something that you need to get rid of, or in the next example, if you wanted to add music. So most of the time, the key uses of music in a podcast will be intro music, outro music, or transition music. And so it's very easy to add that. The first thing you'll have to do is while you have your podcast audio here, you'll need to make a new track to put the music in. So the way to do that is simply tracks up here at the top, add new. Now, whichever type of track it is, it should match what you already have. If it's recorded on a regular microphone or a computer or something like that, it's likely to automatically be a stereo track. If it's recorded on some programs on your phone, it might come out as a mono track, and you'll need to know this before putting it in so you can put it in the right one. There are ways to turn a mono track into stereo track, but it's not ideal. But that's more advanced, so we're not going to worry about that. So we'll create a new stereo track that will now put a 2-channel track beneath the one, and those 2 channels, that's left and right speaker, and same on this one, that's what comes out of the left to right speaker. And so if we want the music, then we'll need to place it into here. So exporting the music directly into this program can be a little problematic, especially with some of the earlier versions of this. So they've theoretically improved it in the newer version, but just to be safe, I open it in a separate window. So this is the music, and I brought it in, our intro music, and I brought it in through a different window. Okay, so that's at the correct volume that I want it at, and notice it's 15 seconds long. So then I want to copy or highlight or cut this and paste it into the other file. So I'm copying and pasting, Control C, and then wherever you put it on here is where it's going to come in at first. So I'll put it here, because the general way we like to do it is have the intro stated, then the music, then then the host say their names. So in order to do that, we place it here, but this is now overlapping. So if you played it now,
I'm Tim Schlittner.
And I'm Julie Green.
not exactly what we're going for. Now, you could do that. You could have background music, and that's very common, but that's not what we were going for. So in order to make sure that this music doesn't overlap that the way that we don't want it to, I'm going to have to move some of this. So the way to move it is to split it. And so you pick the exact spot you want to split it at, and then you're going to come up here to Edit, Clip Boundaries, Split. Now you have 2 pieces here, and they're movable. So if you switch up here to the Time Shift tool, it's the side-to-side arrow, I can now take this one, and if we zoom out, it's much easier to see. I can move this past the music so that the music is not interrupted by that. Now, the way we do it, we overlap the music a little bit so that like the words stop as the music starts. They kind of overlap a little bit on the beginning and the end. Now, this line up here is probably about good.
This is State of the Unions.
So it starts to come in maybe even a little earlier.
This is State of the Unions.
Okay. And then on the inside, we'll have the words start as the music dies out.
I'm Tim Schlittner.
And I'm Julie Green.
Now, that was done pretty well because this is an existing thing. But so if you wanted the music to be even softer because you don't want it to overpower the vocals, which if it were louder it might, you would still do that fade in or fade out thing. So, or if you wanted to chop up the music a bit. So let's say I don't want this much and I want to take off, make this much shorter. So let's say I only want like 9 seconds of music intro. There's a break in the music right there. Let's just do it randomly. Okay. So now if we play this out though, it cuts off a little weirdly. So what we do is what I showed you before. Take that last segment and fade it out. And so it's not as harsh. And then you slide the music back, the vocals back in there. And now while that one part's fading out, Tim will come in and you won't hear any awkwardness on the fade, so it'll go smoothly.
This is State of the Unions. I'm Tim Schlittner.
And I'm Julie Green.
Like I said, that could be a little bit smoother there, but this is just a quick example. And, a lot of the stuff is the precision of it is, like with any kind of thing like that, it's kind of an artwork. How precise you get into it, how much time you put into it is kind of up to you. One other major trick I will show you is that depending on your recording area, you may have background noise that's consistent and persistent but problematic. So if you listen to this version of it, there's a buzz in the background that you can hear. So
this is State of the Unions. I'm Tim Schlittner.
And I'm Julie Green.
Now, ideally, you don't want that buzz there, but you can't really separate the music from the background noise except with certain tools. And a lot of tools are problematic because they'll remove part of the vocal. But in this case, we can isolate that buzz and remove it from the entire thing. So this is another effects tool that we're going to use. So the first thing you're going to need to do is find a spot in the recording where you hear just the thing you don't want. So in this case, it'll be just the buzz. Luckily, there are very easy spots for this. For instance, up here at the beginning, there's no talking there. That's just buzz. And in this period section right here, and once you have a section highlighted, you can always like listen to it by itself by just hitting play while it's highlighted. So there's no talking there. That's clearly just buzz. So you highlight a section like that, then you go into effect and you go to noise reduction. Noise reduction is going to give you this screen. The first time you hit it, get noise profile. Click on that, it'll go away. That means it's got this noise profile that's in this selection right here. But I don't want to just remove it from there. I want to remove it from everything, including the talking parts. So what I will do is select everything and then go back into the effect and hit noise reduction. And now it will remove that noise profile that you previously got from there with just this hitting OK. Now, you can do it a little stronger or a little weaker by sliding these. I think when I tested this needed to be a little stronger, so I'm going to move it up to 30. But if you go too high, it'll remove stuff that you actually want. So you got to be real careful on that, and you may have to experiment. You can preview, but it only previews from the beginning, so it's not a great preview. So you're better off to go ahead and OK it, then play and see what it sounds like.
This is State of the Unions. I'm Tim Schlittner.
And I'm Julie Green.
We are honored to be...
Okay, now that drastically affected the sound quality, so we did too much. So what we're going to do is undo that, and then we're going to try again, okay? So everything is still the same. All we do is hit Control-Z, undo. So what I'm going to do now is go into noise removal, because it's noise reduction, because that profile should still be there. Put this back down to 20. Now, that should make a big difference. We okay it, it goes through.
This is State of the Unions. I'm Tim Schlittner.
And I'm Julie Green.
We are honored to be joined...
So both the buzz is gone, but you also don't have that more tinny sound that was in that previous one. Ideally, the best solution for this, though, is to record in a place that doesn't have those background noises, because they're harder to remove, and you can't always do it without harming your actual audio. All right, so those are the basic tricks. There's a couple other things that I just needed to mention that you can't do with these simple things, and maybe not even with the more expensive ones. But the big picture overall is that it's really hard to fix bad audio. If you record it poorly, you can't just fix it in post. It's certainly not for a low budget, and certainly not with someone who's not a sound technician. So your best bet is to go really hard and test things in advance and make sure that you're recording them properly so you don't have those problems. We've recorded episodes that we had to throw away because the recording just wasn't that good. And this is particularly a problem if you're recording over a phone or sometimes the internet. So you've got to be particularly careful about the quality. Test things in advance. Make sure you know what your output's going to sound like afterwards. You also can't keep turning up the volume more and more, because there's only so much data that exists, and it doesn't automatically amplify. So if you've got something recorded really, really soft, trying to turn it up too much will distort it and will make it unlistenable. So again, that initial recording is the key. It's also very difficult to edit out things like crosstalk or like someone knocks over a glass and it breaks in the background while people are talking. Those things are almost impossible to edit out, even with high-level, expensive software, much less with the free stuff. So the pro tip on fixing stuff like any of these major problems is to fix it while you're recording. So if you're not broadcasting live, which a podcast generally isn't, if you're on radio, you've got to kind of roll with it. But if you're not broadcasting live, don't act like you are. If someone messes up, stop, take a breath, and go again. You can delete that stuff out much easier than you can fix things that are where you didn't get the words in, or you misspoke, or you said the wrong name, or crosstalk happens, or a car honks outside, or whatever, sirens go by. Those things are almost all impossible to fully remove without damaging the rest of the audio. So if you're not broadcasting live, pause, go back and restate the thing in a casual enough way that it sounds, that you're back into the regular conversation, and stop, pause. That's your friend when you're recording podcasts. So that's it for this part.